So you're thinking about moving to Michigan. Well, in this video, we want to give you the 15 pros and cons of living in Michigan. Not just the pros and cons, but the 15 honest pros and cons when moving to Michigan. So you're thinking about moving to Michigan and you want to know the pros and cons, the ins and outs, and you want an honest review of that, well then this video is for you. My name is Matt Talbot. My team and I help people just like you every single day move here to Michigan, and we absolutely live for it. I am the associate broker of the Talbot team from Redefined Real Estate, and my team and I are full of great agents that can help you move to the area. So if that's you, comment below or hit the Calendly link here on YouTube and set up a consultation today. So honest reviews, pros and cons of living in Michigan. I first and foremost definitely want to source this article. We're going to give the Honest Local a shout out here because I think this is a great article. The 15 honest pros and cons of living in Michigan. So I'm going to go through the 15 pros and cons that the Honest Local has in this article, and I'm going to give a local's perspective to it, a little bit of spin from a real estate agent perspective, and a little bit of a spin from someone that's born and raised here in Michigan. 15 honest pros and cons of living in Michigan. So first and foremost, I love the intro article. I'm just going to source this article a ton today. Think about living in Michigan? If so, you're in good hands. If you lived in the Great Lakes state for the past 10 years, I've definitely learned a thing or two about honest pros and cons living in Michigan. Based on this person who wrote the article. Home to a population of 10 million residents, Michigan is the 10th most populous state, best known for self-sufficient locals, a Midwestern hospitality, and epic outdoor recreation. Making no mistake, there's a lot of love about this slice of heaven. Love that. They crushed that article, okay? So, 10 most populous state in the country. So obviously we're up there when it comes to populous state. Some of the largest cities in Michigan, according to this article: Detroit, 633,000 people, average salary $72,000, median home price $100K. Grand Rapids, population 197,000 people, average salary $65,000, median home price $262. Warren City, population 138,000, average salary $50,000, median home price $176,000. So Warren's a big city. Grand Rapids is a big city, and obviously Detroit are the three biggest cities. There's a lot of other cities, obviously, in Michigan, in southeast Michigan, depending on where you're looking at: Ann Arbor, Lansing, Kalamazoo, Traverse City. There's a lot of other cities throughout the state that are of decent size, but those are the biggest of the article sources. So first and foremost, we're going to dive right into the pros of living in Michigan. And number one on the Honest Locals review here is the slow pace of life. So it talks about this particular author moving from out of state to Michigan, and that they claim that it's a slower pace of life. And so it mentions some of our local cities and towns which have that small town feel, which I could get that. If you're moving from a big city, if you're moving from different places in the country and you're moving to one of those more small towns, you probably will have a much slower pace of life. And in fact, you're probably expecting that. I would be surprised if you weren't. And it mentions that Detroit, is maybe an outlier to that. I've done a lot of traveling throughout the country. I've been on a lot of vacations. I've checked out different places. And one thing that I've noticed is definitely in the city of Detroit is Detroit hustles harder. That's also a branded trademark thing, so we want to make sure to reference everything. But I just think that in Detroit, things do move pretty fast when it comes to business and service and, how things happen. For instance, like when you're greeted at a restaurant or when you order a beer, like we're almost expected for it to move pretty fast here in the city of Detroit, at least, and in Michigan compared to other places. I swear, you'll go to like out west, you'll be in the mountains, they're just like on mountain time, or some places you'll be on the beach, they're just on beach time. It's just a slower roll in certain places. I think that I'm a little bit impartial to this, that Detroit does move kind of quick compared to other places in the country. Not to completely go against the grain here based on this article, but I think that it does move pretty quick when it comes to service-based things. Now, there might be a slower pace of life if you do move to the suburbs and, you live in a small town and, you walk the dog and you kind of take it easy and you walk up to the local stores and all that great stuff. So that can be a huge pro. However, I think Detroit moves nice and quick when it comes to your service-based businesses. Number two on the Honest Locals article here is going to be access to top-notch outdoor recreation. That was a mouthful for me for some reason. I don't know. It's Friday. Bear with me here, but I promise we got some good stuff coming up. So access to outdoor top-notch recreation. I think that's huge, right? So in Michigan, if you're moving to this state, one of the biggest benefits that we have is access to outdoor stuff to do, okay? We have sea seasons, which means there's a variety of different things. We have so many lakes. We have the Great Lakes. There's so many things to do outside. So if you're into hiking or hunting or fishing or boating or jet skiing or water skiing, there's so many things. Ice fishing in the winter. We have skiing up north. Kind of, not compared to out west, but we do have skiing up north. We have cross-country skiing. I mean, there's so many different things to do. Snowmobiling all year round, okay? So access to that is huge here in Michigan. And I still think, I say this in so many videos that we make, it is the most underrated thing in Michigan. I think people think like North Carolina or out west, and you think Colorado or California, you have these like outdoor things to do, right? And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of beautiful places in the country without a doubt, and we don't have these sheer rock cliffs like you might get in the Rockies and stuff. But if you start exploring throughout the lower peninsula, there's tons of stuff. And if you go into the upper peninsula, it's limitless with how beautiful it gets. Pictured rocks is gorgeous up there. I mean, it is unreal. So access to this type of stuff is huge. So if you get a job here in Southeast Michigan and you're of the type of lifestyle where you have the ability and you're blessed enough to be able to do a little bit of traveling or go on vacations or rent Airbnb, or in a crazy world have a second house and a lake house or up north, this is such a great place to do it. So I think a lot of tech people, as an example, come to mind, and I think like North Carolina, they move there, and they get the house and they get the lake house or the ocean house, or they get a house up in the mountains, and they appreciate that. And I think you get the same type of beauty here in Michigan in a lot of ways. You just need to know where to go. So access to outdoor recreation is huge. Lots of things to do, lots of different places to explore, tons to dive into if you're moving from different places in the country or in the world. Specifically, like if you're moving from a New York City or if you're moving from a Chicago, like I know there's upstate New York. I get that. It's wildly expensive, right? The difference here is you get a lot more bang for your buck, and it's just as gorgeous, in my opinion, in upstate Michigan compared to upstate New York. And again, fraction of the price because you're not competing with all those New York people. So if you're moving here and you want to live in Detroit or Metro Detroit area, and you're thinking about this area and you want a second house or you want to be able to travel or Airbnbs, this is such a beautiful state to do so. Number 3 on our list of honest pros of living in Michigan, and that is going to be affordable housing market according to this article. I think this is huge. They state the Michigan average home price is $237 when the national average is $430 across the country. I think this can be a little bit skewed. I'm always careful here, guys. I get a lot of flack sometimes in the comments of like what the data shows, and obviously being a licensed real estate agent, I can dive into national data and local data and stuff like that, but it really depends on how you're looking at it. Are you looking at just single family houses? Are you rolling in condos in there? Are you looking at specific marketplaces? So there's a lot of different ways. That being said, $237 to $430, they're showing it a lot more affordable housing here in Michigan, and I believe that specifically if you're moving from a lot of the places in which we get clients to move from. So in which we get clients that are moving from, I should say, not to move from. I'm not really good at convincing people to move across the country, but there's a lot of people that want to move across the country, and we're great at helping those people out. So Florida is a huge one, right? Texas is another place we get a lot of people moving from. Chicago, parts of California, without a doubt, on a regular basis. And recently, a lot of people from the East Coast. So there's been this recent spike in our business of people from Washington, D.C., New York City, places like that are moving from the East Coast back home or closer to family or what have you. And they're doing so because they're working from home and they get a better cost of living, and not just a better cost of living, but a more affordable house. They get a lot more bang for their buck. We have a great client right now. We have a great opportunity of getting a referral from a client. We have another one that's also moving from DC that found us on this channel, and they said they one of the big reasons why they're moving is because they can sell their $1.5 million house and buy something very, very nice here in Michigan for $600-700 in the areas that they want to be. And so it's just a lot more bang for their buck currently, and I think the housing market definitely has that, depending on specific cities, locations, where you need to be, all this different stuff. We can deep dive and specifically tell you, where you're at, what your current home value is compared to here, and what that offset cost might be if you really want to get that granular, if that's going to really influence your decision. What we find for the most part is that as a macro answer for many places that people move from, you get a lot more home here in Michigan compared to other places in the country. Number 4 on the Honest Locals list here is Midwestern hospitality is in full effect. I really like this one. The reason why I like to source this article is because I want to compare my experience, born and raised in Michigan my entire life, to someone that moved here from a different place in the country, which again, again, we've done a lot of this with clients, but this is an interesting article. That's why I wanted to kind of go through it and compare and contrast here, and definitely note it because I think it's a great article. In this section, he mentions, or they mention, I should say, moving from Atlanta, Georgia, but the Midwest hospitality is something else. He said, one of my favorite things about setting up here in the Midwest is the undeniable Midwest hospitality. We've all heard of Southern hospitality. I moved from Atlanta, Georgia, but Midwest hospitality is something else. It's hard to explain the extent of hospitality I've experienced when living in Michigan. Everyone is eager to help, and everyone feels neighborly. I've lost count of the number of times I've seen strangers commit random act of kindness on the benefit of others. I was so warmly greeted by my neighbors shortly after moving to Michigan. Everyone eager to share their favorite spots, restaurants, campgrounds, hikes. I never experienced anything like it. At this point, I refuse to leave because of it. Wow, what a quote. This is like such a great quote from this article, because I think it's dangerously true. And the reason why I think it's true is because a lot of people that move here tell us this. First and foremost, don't hear it from me. Number two is I have done a lot of traveling myself, and I do travel across the country. And again, some places like feel cold, and it's a little bit weird when you're from the Midwest and you go somewhere and you're like, hey, how's it going? And someone just kind of like looks at you. You're like, all right, yep, screw me, right? Okay, we'll see you later. It's just, anyway, it's just how we are wired here. Great example. This morning, I'm leaving, I'm coming here, I'm on my way to shoot this YouTube video. I'm walking out the door, and there's a contractor. I live in a condo. There's a contractor working on the in a different unit, and they had the door propped open, and like open the door, and I'm trying to like prop the door back open because there's a code to get in. Anyway, long story short, the guy was like super nice. Like, hey, how's it going? How's your day going? And there's just something about like that type of experience here in Michigan. I think for some people, it might take some getting used to. If you're moving from Los Angeles or New York or one of these big cities, it might actually take some getting used to, of not just walking by this down the street and being cold-hearted to everyone, because I feel like that's what some places are like. Again, not every person. I'm not hating in LA or New York. I get it. But it's just, to me, it is something that's very, very special. It's very, very neighborly. So many of our clients that we help sell homes, they're so gracious in helping the new buyers. When people buy homes, they're always talking about the neighbors and how people are helping each other out and trying to point each other in the right direction. Just as real estate agents, we do a lot of that, of course, naturally as part of our job, but it's also part of the Midwest vibe. We did an event the other day that we were volunteering for. It's a nonprofit event, and we met somebody, and they were, kind of in tune with the different restaurants and stuff, but they were a younger couple, and they're like, hey, where are like the good like bars that I might not know about? Where are like the cool spots that are kind of unheard, the dive bars, so to speak, right? So I made sure to grab their name and number, and I was like in the middle of the fundraiser thing, but I texted them a bunch of different dive bars and different places that I like. And I just think that's the general vibe here in Michigan. I think there's other great people across the country, great areas without a doubt, but in Midwest, it runs deep in our blood. And I love this reference from someone moving from Georgia to here and saying they'll never leave because of it. That's so cool to me, because I think it's very true. Number 5 on this article's list is the low cost of living here in Michigan. I like this because it gives kind of real life examples. Speaking from personal experience, I feel like my quality of life improved greatly after moving to Michigan, simply because I was able to enjoy things more often. My eating out budget affords me 4 to 5 meals per week. Concert tickets aren't obnoxiously overpriced, and I can still go to the movies without sweating credit card statements. So again, this article kind of sources someone moving from a different place in the country to here to Michigan, and I love that because I think you do get a lot more bang for your buck compared to a lot of places. Obviously, there's high-end places. Obviously, if it's a huge concert and sold out, like the ticket prices are going to rise anywhere, right? But for the most part, you do get a lot more bang for your buck here in Detroit, Metro Detroit, and Southeast Michigan. I believe that wholeheartedly. I think about like going out west. For instance, I've seen some shows at Red Rocks recently and stuff, which is an awesome venue, like my favorite place ever. It's such a cool spot, but you pay for it. Like, it's no joke to be able to get into a show. There is still waiting lines for certain shows here in Michigan, but I do believe as far as how far your money goes here in Michigan, it definitely can help out for a lot of people. And so we have cost of living videos out there. If you want to dive deeper into that, follow our channel, hit subscribe, dive into those other videos. I think you can understand more specific niches of what that means to you. So we do dive into cost of living on this channel. However, I love this article because it sources someone's personal experience, and I think we've heard the same from a lot of our clients as well. Number 6 on the Honest Locals review here of pros of living in Michigan is going to be the craft beer scene. So according to the article, there's over 350 breweries in Michigan here. There's tons of craft breweries throughout the state. Some of the areas that have the most amount of craft breweries are actually on the west side of the state, in my opinion. So Kalamazoo is huge. Grand Rapids is huge. There's tons of craft breweries, but they really are across the state in droves. Definitely in Detroit, Metro Detroit, there's a good amount of craft breweries, Ann Arbor area. And so it's just huge here in Michigan. And I love that they sorted this. So again, this isn't for everyone. Obviously, everyone doesn't love craft beer, but I do love that they source this in this article and talking about, you know, some of the different beers if you're into that. So for instance, I went to Western Michigan University, which is where it's out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, and Bell's Brewery was huge when I was at school there. They have Oberon. Two Hearted was like the best beer in the country for a very long time. So there's a lot of breweries here in Michigan which lead towards not just good beer, but leads towards also good food, because a lot of breweries have really good food. One of the first ones that pops in my mind is Shorts Brewery. Great food, great place to see music, and great beer, of course. Shorts Brewery, that's in Bel Air, Michigan. Before I jump into number 7 on the Honest Locals article here, I just want to let you know, hey, listen, this video is getting kind of long and lengthy, so we're going to make it 2 parts, just so you know. This is going to be the pros section of the video. There's going to be part 2, which is going to be the cons section of the video, so I don't want you to think, hey, this is going to be a 30-minute video. We're almost done with the pros here. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the cons, but save for part 2, we'll have it be a follow-up to this video as an FYI. So, number 7 on the Honest Locals review is the winery, so you got to follow up beer with wine. If you're into wine instead of beer, it's definitely wine country here in Michigan and is growing. The Traverse City area is the first area that comes to mind. So if you go to the west side of the state, Southeast Michigan, drive up the west side of the state, there's tons of wine country in that part of the state. I think we're known for kind of white wine, but there's a ton of different wines and wineries to check out. Again, great food, beautiful scenery. I mean, just a fun thing to do. Even if you're not into wine, going to check out the wineries in Traverse City is awesome. Highly, highly recommended. Great place for a vacation, great places to visit, and good wine here in Michigan. So beer, wine, I mean, what more could you ask for? That's a huge pro of living in Michigan. All right. I gotta add something to this. So Mike lived in Southwest Michigan for a long time, and his response to this was, I don't know if you can hear, so I would have you say it, but his response was, when I lived in Southeast Michigan, the right time of year, you're driving down the road, all you smell is grapes from the amount of grapes that are being grown for the wine, which is very cool. I think there's a lot of things like that you have here in Michigan. Certain times of year you have bonfire season, certain times of year. It's just there's a lot of things that live in Michigan that makes it very, very local, and I think that's so cool living on the west side of the state, smelling those grapes from a long distance away, and stuff like that. So anyway, interesting note if you are thinking about the southwest Michigan area, being able to smell those grapes outside. Okay, last but not least, I probably saved the best pro for last, or I shouldn't say I did. The Honest Local article saved the best pro for last, and that's number 8 on their list. Before I get into that, definitely tap for notifications, hit subscribe. Love to let YouTube know that we're doing a good job if this video is providing any value to you. If you're moving here to the state, definitely hit the calendar link on YouTube. Holler at us today. We get tons of calls, texts, and emails. A lot of those calendar links come through on a weekly basis, so we're able to help you out if you are moving to the area. Last on the list, lack of natural disasters. I think this is huge. So my grandfather, he's a little bit of a snowbird now. He goes down south a little bit in the winter because he's like 90, but he always mentions this is a huge one when I travel, and he's like, yeah, well, we don't have big snakes and tornadoes and hurricanes and all this and flooding and all this stuff, and there's a lot of truth to that. Okay, again, beautiful places in the country, not trying to hate on any particular place, but a huge pro living in Michigan is you don't have a lot of natural disasters. You're not going to get hurricanes, you're not going to get tornadoes, you're not going to get earthquakes, there's not going to be massive flooding for the most part. I mean, there is tornadoes occasionally, but there's not any real damage very often. So anyway, there's not a lot of that stuff happening here in Michigan, and so there's some comfort in that, without a doubt. Being able to travel, know that your house is going to be there when you get back is a good starting point. But I think that that's a huge pro of living in Michigan, is you don't have to deal with these natural disasters. Also, not talked about in the article here, but you also don't have to deal with a lot of very large animals that you have to do in certain places in the country. So a lot of places you have snakes and alligators and crocodiles and all sorts of stuff depending where you're at, right? So maybe not a lot of crocodiles in the U.S., but anyway, other places in the world you definitely have crocodiles and big snakes and all sorts of mammals that can eat you, whatever. We don't have a lot of that. If you get north enough, there are some big cats up there in the UP and the top of the lower peninsula, as well as bears. There's definitely some black bears and stuff like that in Michigan, but nothing crazy. It's going to be very unlikely that you are eaten by another animal here in Michigan. So my name is Matt Talbot. My team and I help people just like you every single day move here to Michigan. We absolutely live for it. Stay for video number 2 because we need to roll through the cons of the honest review of living in Michigan.